Hello, everyone. Welcome again to another episode of the Adult Autism, a Spectrum of Uniqueness podcast. I'm joined today by Ariel Rahal. Ariel,
Rahal,
welcome
yeah.
to the pod.
Thank
Okay,
you. Thanks
welcome
for
to the
having me.
podcast. And we're going to address an interesting topic today, and it's one that you've actually written about. It's on autism and loneliness, and I think that's something that a lot of autistic people can relate to in some form or fashion. But
Definitely.
before we dive into that, I just wanted to find out a little bit more about you and just uh, who you are, what you do for a living. And I think that you've been diagnosed or identify as autistic.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, if you would.
Yeah, actually, I have ADHD also. So we'll try and keep everything with as few tangents as possible.
Yeah.
Um, I currently work as mostly what I do is a legal scopist. It's like essentially proofreading machine transcripts of legal proceedings. So I get to like listen in all day long, which is, it's fun. I feel like with my ADHD, I think my career changes every 3 to 4 years or something, but
Sure.
I've been really enjoying it. It's really flexible and I don't know, it's different every day. So it's kind of a perfect neurodivergent job.
Okay.
Um, yeah, with autism, I'm kind of in between a self diagnosis and a formal diagnosis, I would
Yeah.
say. Um, it's one of those things where it was kind of a slow burn. When I was young, my mom works in early childhood education, so
Mm.
she's trained to look for some of the early tells, and there were things
Yeah.
that she had flagged and that stood out to her, but then she thought I grew out of them.
Okay.
What I really, now we know that I was learning to mask at those around that
Sure.
age, and
Hmm.
we had no way of knowing that's what it was. She just thought a lot of it went away. Did well through high school, got good grades, played a lot of volleyball. uh, College, I realized I was struggling like a lot more than my peers were, just with a lot of things. I struggled going to
Okay.
class consistently, figuring out when things were due. I was very distracted by the social scene of things, but also
Mm.
really struggling in those dynamics as well. And kind of, I don't know, we won't get into it that deeply, but the true, just stubborn determination, wasn't going to like fail or drop out. And somewhere in there, I ended up in a nonverbal communications class. And it was like this eye-opening thing that I could like study behavior, not just from like a psychology thing
Sure.
of like the social cues of it. That was
Yeah.
like, I had no idea that was an option.
Okay.
Um, we had a section one day that was about autism and how it impacts nonverbal communication. And I hit I realized I had all the talking points.
Wow.
And yeah, I was like, oh, I relate to all of these experiences a
Yeah.
lot. And that's, when I took the first self-diagnosis questionnaire, this was like 2010. The answers were pretty telling, but I think it took me about like 5 years until I really started to like learn more about it and like really
Right.
identify as that.
Yeah.
And I've had a few therapists that have like confirmed it, but they're not the type of therapist that can like formally diagnose it. And I've kind of been dragging my feet on I've been recommended for it. My doctor says I should do it. I just haven't done it for a handful of reasons. It's a whole nother topic.
Yeah. Okay. So really, this has been a long journey for you.
Yeah.
I mean, this is
Oh
this
yeah.
has been going on since
I was self-diagnosed
2010.
before TikTok. Like
Okay. Okay. Well, last year, let's move into this topic. Last
yeah.
year, you wrote an article, it's a blog article entitled "Getting Honest About Autism and Loneliness: Navigating Friendships in 2024." Tell us a little bit what made you decide you were going to write on that particular topic.
No, I really wanted to write about it because I think autism and loneliness, it's something every single autistic person I know has talked about dealing with. They've
Mm,
always
yeah.
expressed feeling a little bit different. Even if they have friends, they feel like they're missing out on a lot of things. It just seems to be this universal autistic experience, kind of regardless of where you are on the spectrum or like how high or low support needs you are. We've all had that. I mean, it's a universal experience anyway, but especially within the autistic community. And
Hmm.
my main goal that I that I aim for when I'm writing my blog is I just want to break a lot of those stereotypes and make people understand the complexity of neurodiversity and all the things that go into it. And uh, I think there's just this really pervasive stereotype that autistic people aren't interested in friendships and close relationships the
Right.
way
Yep.
neurotypical people are, and
Mm-hmm.
it's damaging on
Yes.
a deep level. And autistic people crave those friendships and like close relationships just as much as neurotypical people do. And so I just, even if it's harder for us to maintain those relationships or make those friendships in the first place, it doesn't mean we don't value them and it's not important to us and we don't crave them. And yeah, so I want to write out because I just think it's so pervasive, and I just want to like break down those stereotypes and change how people
Yeah.
see it.
Well, why do you think that making friends, keeping friends, why is that a difficult thing for many autistic folks? Any thoughts along those lines?
I have a lot of thoughts on those
Okay,
lines.
sure.
I'm probably going to refer to my notes a lot here just because I broke it down into layers when I was trying to think about kind of the layers that go into it.
Okay.
And, I think it's key. There are a lot of layers, like just to be repetitive about it, but from
Hmm.
making friends to keeping friends, the level of support needs, there's so many aspects that go into it. So it's hard to I don't, it's always hard to
What
generalize and
would be one
summarize,
of
but
those? Yeah, but what would be one of those
well,
things you think that makes it
I
difficult?
have a list. I'm just, prefacing, but I think one of the key things is making friends really requires you to put yourself out there and initially talking about topics that may not be particularly interesting. It's kind of
Okay.
surface level initial when you first talk to someone. You're not going to jump into your deepest, darkest things. Yeah, some of us do, and some of us are very responsive to it, and we're like, "Oh, I found my people," but other people are like, "Okay, like
Yeah, too
there's a
too much
lot."
too
Yeah,
fast. Yeah.
yeah. So it's navigating that from the get go.
Hmm.
We really rely on routines, and we're always running scripts in our head. And those
Yeah.
help us to prepare for what we're doing and prepare for what's coming next. And it's hard if you don't have those scripts for a new environment or new people. And a lot of times that leads to anxiety, which causes a lot of avoidant behavior. So there's
Mm.
some of it from that layer. Um, when you struggle to make small talk, it's often, I covered that already. Let me skip through here.
Okay.
I think executive dysfunction can
Mm.
really make an input, like, can really impact that.
Yeah.
Um, there's times where I'm around people that I am interested in befriending or, talking to, and I'm just in my head, like, go say hi, just go say hi, go. You can do it. You've done harder things, go. And
Yes.
there's just a disconnect. There's one thing going on in your brain, and that message is just not connecting to the rest of your body. And so you end up kind of,
Hmm.
you can be in a room full of people, even with the same interests or that are even friendly, even, and you can still feel like you're in kind of a bubble and you're kind of
Right.
everyone's in one room and you're kind of in this loop in your head trying to break through, like, hey, how do I get in there? How do I break through it?
Yeah.
And
Kind of keeps you separate from them in a
exactly,
sense.
even if
Yeah.
that's not what you want, there's just this kind
Right.
of barrier
Hmm.
that's in your brain and you don't know how to cross it because you're thinking in your head, I want to cross that barrier. I'm going to do
Yeah.
it. Let's do it. And
Right.
the signal it's just not there. That's not computing.
Hmm.
I think when it comes to friendships, you also have to consider the struggle with social cues that many autistic people
Okay.
have.
Yeah.
It's difficult for us, and like nonverbal cues, verbal cues, tone, all of those things are vital for social relationships. And when you're missing them and kind of speaking a different language, it's hard to kind of cross that barrier and become friends with someone or more than like a
Hmm.
surface level acquaintance. And I think a lot of people get stuck in that area.
Yeah.
Missing the sarcasm, taking things too literally, and it confuses some people and they don't really
Yeah.
know what to do with it. And you're just kind of like, but I'm just trying to be your friend.
Right. Well, so how do you think that loneliness, how do you
Yeah.
think that loneliness figures into all this? So in other words, is loneliness directly related to difficulty making friends, or could there be other things at play? I mean, what are your thoughts about that?
I think there's definitely other things at play. I mean, everyone deals with loneliness at different times, but you can
Yeah.
accept your autism, but still wish it didn't make things as difficult as it is for you. You can feel like an outsider looking in and you want to do the things that everyone else is doing or be spontaneous with your
Yeah.
friends, and which form being, doing those random adventures and unexpected things is helps form closer social bonds. And when you can't do that without needing, to recover for 3 days in bed afterwards
Yeah.
from some big outing, then it's a very different
Mm-hmm.
kind of role for everyone. And you can kind of feel like a spectator while you're watching everyone else do fun things that you're not a part of. And but I think beyond that, if you break it down even further, what it really comes down to is the societal expectations.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lack of understanding and sympathy for autistic people.
Mm-hmm.
I think if society had more flexibility around social cues and small talk expectations, like it would be a much friendlier place for autistic people. And
Well, and also differences in how people communicate and
exactly,
how they portray themselves and
absolutely.
would be more open to
Yeah.
those differences. Yeah, I think I agree with what you're saying there. In this article, you you talk about this concern over being seen as annoying.
Hmm.
Now, it's
Another common
possible.
autistic experience, I think.
Yeah, I guess it's possible that, being annoying doesn't apply to all autistic people, just like it
Yeah,
doesn't apply to all attention deficit disorder people.
of
But
course.
the ones that it does apply to, do you think that it's something that they're even aware of?
I think that's one that really varies. I think across the spectrum, because
Yeah.
you have some people who can drone on and go about their special interest for like 3 hours, but and not notice that people are glazing over and trying to escape. But then you also have a lot of people who have been like criticized and made fun of for their autistic behaviors on, like, stimming,
Yeah.
especially vocal stim slapping, whatever it is. Those things can annoy people sometimes, especially if they don't understand it or they don't know how to navigate around it. And so I think people who've been criticized a lot for it almost become hypersensitive, and they're kind of they kind of assume oh, am I annoying you because someone coughed? And you're like, they're just clearing their throat, keep going, you're good. So I think it's something that does vary across the spectrum. And I think there are kind of like key parts of being autistic and functioning within your autism that can sometimes be annoying to other people. And I'm going to make an example that like might annoy some people, because I know some people have an issue with like the stereotypical typical behavior of Sheldon Cooper on The Big Bang Theory. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
but he has his schedule
Sure.
for his, and like for their takeout menu, even like Mondays, whatever Italian, whatever Thai
Right.
food, whatever their schedule is. And to him, it's just the routine. It's normal. He can
Right.
prepare for and know what to expect for the day, what he's looking forward to eating. But sometimes his friends want to eat something else, and he can have kind of a disproportionate response to that
Right.
difference.
Yeah. Don't
And I
mess around with
imagine
my
that,
routine.
yeah, exactly. And I imagine that's really annoying for the
Yeah.
other people around. And so to him, it's just the normal and part of the routine. And he's like, why does it bother you? That's our routine.
Right.
And so I think that's kind of a thing that a lot of autistic people can relate to, even if that's not it's a stereotype and people don't like that. I think that experience people can relate to, of sometimes you're just kind of in the survival mode of your routine, and it negatively
Yes.
impacts other people. And it can be hard to be aware of that because you're just in that survival mode.
Well, and I wonder if that kind of figures into the whole loneliness thing. I mean, maybe if some people who are autistic who are annoying, and it just doesn't only apply to autistic people, but
Oh,
um,
yeah. Everyone can
people
be
people
annoying.
will kind of get tired of the routines of the behaviors. They will start to distance themselves from the autistic person. Um,
Well,
and
and
I
I think
wonder
some
if
autistic people will isolate themselves. They don't want to feel
ah
like a burden to other people, and
okay
they don't want to be annoying with their routine or what time they need to go to bed and stuff like that. And so they just they bow out of plans, or they don't engage with things because they don't want to bother someone else with it, but they know that they need to stick to that routine to be able to function the next day. And so it's
That's a
kind of,
good
you end up,
point.
end up a little boxed into a corner where you end up lonely because of the choices you have to make because of your autism, or if you don't want to be totally dysregulated. And so I think it can be isolating as much as it can go the other direction.
It's like a damned if you do, damned if you don't, right?
Exactly. I
Type
think
of
that
type of
also sums up the
situation.
autistic experience.
Oh, that kind of sucks.
It does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what are some ways that autistic folks can deal with this isolation, this loneliness? Because a lot of people experience this, and it's just they don't necessarily want this. But they don't know what they should do because you're right. I mean, they do have the ways that they do things, and maybe some anxiety figures into it as well about,
Definitely.
what do
Yeah.
people think about me or evaluate me. So what do you think that they can do? Any ideas along those lines?
Well, I think the most, I'm kind of going to merge the two questions we have going in
Okay.
this end here, but
Yeah.
I think one of the most important things is to not resign yourself to loneliness. It's not, everyone experiences being lonely at some point, and you can use that kind of as a time to reflect on where things are. Could you be, engaging with people a bit more? Could you be reaching out to people a bit more? Could you
Yeah.
be doing something new and not just accepting this as your reality forever? I think it's
Hmm.
really important to not feel, I don't know, that like that darkness of it. You see it as like
Right.
a problem solver. We tend to be problem solvers. And I think framing it that way can be helpful. Like look at it as a problem that you can solve. And there's a lot of things you can do. I think um, a lot of autistic people are huge readers, and I think a lot of us don't realize that we can focus that on learning things. Like the way I like obsessively started reading nonverbal communications book like
Yeah.
helped my relationships tremendously.
Sure.
Um, there's books like last year I read Relating While Autistic by Wendella Whitcomb Marsh, if you've heard of it.
Okay.
Really insightful read, and it's like written by neurodivergent for neurodivergent. So it's like very digestible with, action plans that make sense.
Nice.
Yeah, it was great. It's really insightful. So I think using reading as a way to like learn how to
Okay.
connect in that way can be really helpful.
Hmm.
Um, I know it's kind of everyone says it, but therapy can be very helpful.
Yes. Hmm.
It can
Yes,
help you
indeed.
identify and process that that's what you're feeling. Sometimes it can also feel like anger or frustration, but it's actually loneliness, and
Right.
recognizing those feelings, with those very complex feelings sometimes within ourselves, is important, and it can help build coping skills, look for solutions. But I also think a lot of autistic people were raised with a lot of like negative messaging about their autistic behaviors, and we internalize a
Right.
lot of it. And
Right.
so
Exactly.
I think it's also really important to learn to like separate out the trauma from the autistic behaviors so that we can feel worthy of friendships and don't feel like we deserve to be lonely. I think
I think,
that's
yeah, and I agree. I think the point that you made about therapy is an important one because
yeah,
if you're feeling lonely, you kind of feel like you're isolated, people don't understand me, and just kind of feel alone. But you talk to a therapist, and then that's your first step in kind of getting
yeah,
out there, kind of starting to expand a little
yeah.
bit.
Changing your
Not
framework a little.
Yeah, and not that you go to therapy to have your therapist be your friend, but
Yeah,
really just to kind of look at, what are my issues? What are the things that I have struggled with that
yeah,
have made it difficult for me to establish friendships or relationships with other people? Maybe there are some blind spots that people
definitely.
have
Oh,
that,
definitely.
you know
Yeah.
what, I never thought about that. Maybe people do get annoyed when I kind of do these
Yeah.
deep dives too fast when I meet them or whatever the case might be.
I
And
also
to
think
kind
that
of,
loops in with occupational therapy, which I think people kind of forget is like a social skills building thing. It's not just for like improving your
yes,
handwriting. They can teach you
yes,
like serve and return communication, which I didn't just do, but like,
right,
things like
exactly.
that. It can be like very helpful for
Yeah,
improving those social situations, learning how to approach people, reading some of the cues.
right.
Um, Yeah, what you were saying.
Yeah, and I think that, one of the things that you had mentioned earlier is that sometimes people will see these barriers that are
Yeah,
just, oh, this is too much for me to do. But I think that if they start small and just do something very small that's doable, where they
yeah,
get a quick win, where they kind of show themselves that, oh, maybe I
yeah,
can do this, maybe I can do that, that I don't have to be lonely, that there is a possibility that I can establish relationships, but it all starts off small. And
yeah,
I think with the help of a therapist in particular, they can come up with strategies, problem solving, like you were talking about, that would help them along those lines. So
yeah.
you
I also
kind of
think it's crucial to find your people, whether and like your therapist can help you do that sometimes and
right,
helping you identify groups that you want to engage in more, finding meetups with other like with autistic people in your area. There's a lot more of them now. People are craving more contact
yeah,
after COVID, and book clubs, you go to meetups for your special interests. There's like things you can do that are still within an autistic framework. It doesn't always have to be
exactly.
a huge overwhelming thing.
It's really interesting to see how many of those social activities for autistic people
Yeah.
have started to become a bigger thing. I know in my city that's happening down the road in Chattanooga. It's a huge thing.
Yeah, it's
It
cool.
it is very cool to see that, and it's about time, for
Yeah,
autistic folks to have opportunities to do things that are of interest to them and that
absolutely.
correspond to what they do. So, well, where can people locate articles? Because this is just one article that you wrote,
Yeah.
but you have a whole bunch of blog posts. Where can people find these if they're interested in learning more about you and your writings and all that kind of good stuff?
Yeah, you can head over to neurospicynonsense.com is the blog I run. Talking about
Neurospicy nonsense.
neurospicy nonsense. It's all
All
kinds of
right.
stuff because we're talking about anxiety, ADHD, alexithymia. We're talking about all kinds of things. Whether it's the interconnection of childhood trauma and autism, or like neurodivergent friendly clothing. Right, I'm doing all kinds of things
That's
wherever
cool.
the brain blows.
Well, what we didn't tell the audience before you and I talked about this before we started
Yeah,
this recording here today, but what we didn't tell them is that we're located in different countries. Here I
yeah.
am in Tennessee in the United States, but you are in where?
I'm in Tel Aviv. I'm in Tel Aviv,
You're in
Israel.
Israel,
Yeah,
yeah. So
yeah,
we're a long way away. We had to kind of figure out what our time frames
yeah.
were to. So it's
I
seven
also I had no
o'clock.
idea that Tennessee had two time zones. That's something new I learned.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, Eastern and Central.
It's
So
interesting.
here I am at what is it, 11, almost 11:30 in the morning, and I think where you are, it's 7:30 at
Yeah.
night. So
Yep.
it's nice that we were able to get this all
And it's
figured
the
out.
weekend here. Friday's mostly a weekend day for us.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. All
Yeah.
right. Well, I really appreciate you coming on to do
Yeah.
this,
Thanks
to
so much for
share
having me.
your
This was great.
perspectives and all that kind of stuff. And
I'm
um,
always happy to share my opinions. I
oh
have so many
yeah.
of them.
Oh well, thanks so much for doing this, and you have a good rest of the day.
Thanks. You too, Chris. It was great.
Okay.